Allora, Gaetano di Palo, Fondazione IFEL Campania, in-house company of the Region Campania. We've been assisting and helping Region Campania in carrying out the operations of the crowdfunding project since May 2021 and all the way to the end, which is in a couple of weeks.
Okay. So, do you think crowdfunding is an interesting financing tool in the Mediterranean context, and in what sense?
Yeah, oh, sure it is. Of course, it's not something that can solve all the problems, but since we have complex situations to face, I mean, the more tools we have to use, the better, and the solutions we might get. So I will see this more than an alternative, such as an additional tool, together with most traditional ways of getting funds. So, plus the idea is also to involve. Ding dong! Ding dong!
Okay, if you can repeat the
Yeah, no worries. Just the last question.
Sì.
So, if you want to say, how do you see crowdfunding as an interesting financing tool, especially in the Mediterranean region?
Okay, I think sure it is a very important tool, a very interesting one, not as an alternative, but as an additional tool. We have complex problems to face and cope with, and therefore we need as many tools as possible. And crowdfunding might be one of them, especially because it involves people. And when you involve people, decisions are taken together. You might even be more sure that the things that you are doing might impact on society and on community if you involve the community in the decision-making process.
And as for MatchFunding, from your perspective, what challenges does it face as a tool to finance sustainable development in the Mediterranean area?
Yeah, well, the match funding thing, it's an evolution. So it needs, we have to see if the ground is ready, if the cultural ground is ready in order to involve also the local authorities or sponsors into the match funding operation. It's a complex operation. So I think it's very useful, and it can be used in a second stage once that the common ground is more able to receive these kind of things. However, especially in the Mediterranean area, we have found out through our pilot actions that culturally people are getting a little bit closer to the thing. They're getting more familiar, especially with online transactions, which is of course a barrier. And also the local authorities are starting to think about using it because it has a multiplier effect, a leverage effect. Plus, they can listen to the community by using the match funding program. So the idea is to get a win-win situation. The local authorities do something for the community, being sure that this will impact their lives. And at the same time, the same amount of money can be spent on more projects instead of a little amount of projects itself. So I think it's a good thing, but there is still a long way to go to involve. It's something too new, but can be done.
So, in what sense do you think a public authority can benefit from match funding?
Well, they can benefit in two main ways. First of all, as a leverage. With the same amount of money, of course, they can finance many more projects involving, for the other part, other kind of parties. On the other hand, the other idea is the involvement, communities, because the match funding means that there must be a program, and within this program there must be calls, within this call there must be projects, and when somebody writes a project to get fund, it's a sort of self-discipline. They think about it. They think what they have to do. They ask themselves questions before applying for money. And this is a very important thing to make things much more serious. Finally, by this way, the local authorities can somehow strengthen the link with the community, because oftentimes, the citizens feel the local authorities far. Instead, by match funding things, by the animation, social animation and social innovation, you can shorten the distance between the local authorities and the citizens. And this is a great advantage because you get credibility and your authority is felt. And you're not an enemy, but you're somebody who's trying to do something for you and involving you.
Great. And finally, if you want to share with us any comments about, I don't know, something interesting that you learned yesterday in the MatchMed event, or something that you paid attention to?
Yeah, yesterday it was very interesting because I've been dealing with this crowdfunding. I'm not an expert of crowdfunding, for God's sake, it's a job. I do other things, but I must say it's been 13 months so far that I've been dealing with crowdfunding, match funding and stuff. So I heard a lot, I read a lot, and yet yesterday I was able to enrich myself even more, because the more you stay in the field, the more you get to know. So I really learned new things yesterday, especially the case studies presented by the guys working in Catalonia, and also all the figures and numbers and data analysis made by Enrique, professor from the Free University of Catalonia. They were very interesting because, of course, when you think about crowdfunding, it sounds like something more homemade, you know? And instead, this data and the data analysis and all these things, if you actually put your mind to them and you can start studying them and processing them and getting out results, correlation, statistics and stuff, which is something you should do, especially if you are a local authority investing money on people, dealing with social stuff, with crowdfunding and things like this. But those data are very precious. They can prevent you from making mistakes, such as investing money where it is not needed, for instance, or geographically to give some priorities. This was very interesting yesterday. So again, the more you think, the more you learn in this field. There's never enough.